Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Reads. Today I want to talk about the book Vampire of the Mists by Christie Golden, which you will see here. I need to do some explaining first, at least I feel I need to, about Dungeons & Dragons. A lot of people are aware of the existence of Dungeons & Dragons, but with the popularity of the film Honor Among Thieves and the fact that the characters in the streaming show Stranger Things play D&D. So most people are aware of it. Dungeons and Dragons is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game where people pretend to be characters and one character kind of guides them through the game. It's open-ended. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't really have a game world of its own. I mean, it kind of does. You know, the rule books mention certain things, but players are encouraged to create their own worlds. You know, build cities, you know, culture, things like that. People aren't, the gamers are encouraged to create their own universe. And many people actually do. And some people wrote novels about those things. You know, they created their own play world with their own unique settings and wrote novels about the stories of the games that they played or ideas that they had. So, you have, Greyhawk, which is not as popular, but does exist. You've got Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, Red Sun, Planescape. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. And did I say Red Sun? Red Sun, or Red Steel. Red Steel. That only lasted for a little while. But you also have things like Ravenloft. Ravenloft is basically a Dungeons and Dragons game where the person who they designed their own game world, but based it on Gothic horror. The primary antagonists are all things like vampires, zombies, werewolves, things that we consider Gothic horror. Frankenstein's monster, Phantom of the Opera, Jekyll and Hyde, all those classical stories. And he wanted the game to feel like that, in a world where, the players are outnumbered by the forces of evil. And I really enjoyed that concept. And Ravenloft takes that setting. And Christie Golden, this is the first book in the Ravenloft series, a series of books based on the world of Ravenloft. Without going into too much detail, Ravenloft isn't actually a world of its own. It's more like a patchwork where individual powerful creatures control their individual domains, but there's no actual planet or universe. Each one is sectioned off by the mists of Ravenloft. And the mists of Ravenloft draw people into them. So the main character of this book is named Jandar Sunstar. He is actually a rare creature. He is an elvish vampire. And in spite of being a vampire, he still tries to at least not be evil. He tries not to kill people when he feeds on them. If he does have to kill people, he tries to kill only bad people. So he tries to do good while still forced to be a creature of darkness. Things don't always go the way you plan, though. And after something bad happens, Jandar is drawn into the world of Ravenloft. And it is unlike anything he's ever seen before. Not all the rules that he's used to dealing with, apply. Some of them are improvements. He gains some new strengths. He also gains some new weaknesses. Or, in the world of Ravenloft, the world that these people have created, the rules of the undead and the monsters don't necessarily work the same way as they do in the basic Dungeons and Dragons rules. They wanted to throw people off their game, but that's game stuff. I want to talk about the book stuff. Jandar winds up making the acquaintance of another vampire, Strahd, who is the titular Baron of Ravenloft and the vampire who rules his domain. He somehow befriends Jander. Jander not truly realizing the depth of his evil, because, I mean, Strahd is a vampire, and not entirely unhappy to be so. He likes the power it gives him. And as the Lord of the Domain, he has an awful lot of power. Jander does eventually find out exactly who and what Strahd is, and gets an idea of what's going on here. And you know, as always in Gothic horror, things aren't always what they seem. Damn, I really would like to talk about this, but I would hate to spoil it. Ravenloft has probably over a dozen books in the series. While I do like this one, it's not my favorite of the series. It's decent. It was written in the 90s, so take that into consideration. There are some things in here which might not have aged well. I know they haven't aged well with certain people. Being that I am an older generation, certain concepts I find I can brush over a little easier. There is a group of people in this book called the Vistani. They are basically gypsies, a term which I know does not go over well sometimes these days, but they are based on that. And I think that's one of the things that might not have aged very well. Given that I grew up in an era when I thought gypsies were cool, I've had a hard time adjusting to the fact that people say you're not supposed to say that anymore. Because I had no negative connotation to it in my youth. I thought it was a good thing, which makes it hard for me to mentally relate to it as something not. So I know some people will find the Vistani a bit of a caricature, although I like them. I think they're interesting. I think they're portrayed decently. But again, because of my history with that particular aspect, I'm not sure how well that has aged. Strahd's relationship with women isn't always the most decent. He is a vampire. He does like having his little vampire coven. I don't think he would call it a coven, but he does like having a female companions who happen to be vampires. So some people might take that as misogynistic and sexist, but the character of Strahd is also very misogynistic and sexist. He is what he is. He is a creature of in some ways, his own making. But yeah, I've enjoyed the Ravenloft books. It's an interesting take on the Dungeons and Dragons theme. Of all the Dungeons and Dragons spin-offs that there have been, the Ravenloft one has intrigued me the most. You know, there have been others, like I said, there's been Planescape, Spelljammer, Red Steel, Dark Sun. Those were all, you know, Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, and Dragonlance are all very traditional high fantasy. Ravenloft takes that high fantasy and pushes it in a direction that is different, and I have enjoyed it a lot. Take it for what it is. It's 90s writing. It is to me, an interesting mix of Dungeons and Dragons fantasy with Gothic horror, and I think they do a decent job of it. And I've read other books by Christie Golden, and I've liked her writing. So, as always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.